Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Nutrimedical Report with Dr. Bill Deagle. And Dr. Bill won't be on the air today. I'm going to be guest hosting for him. My name is Ryan Frace, and I work with Dr. Bill in his Nutrimedical line of products. It's called Nutrimeds. And there's always a lot that Dr. Bill likes to cover. I'd like to think today that we could slow it down a little bit. Oftentimes, Dr. Bill, as everybody that listens to him knows, he gets excited about certain protocols and certainly names quite a few things. So we'll take a little slower today. That's a bit more my style, and hit on what I think are some of the most pressing issues that people in general are facing with in the land and environments that we live in. And many people that have listened to the show before, we know that stress is a top and paramount thing that everybody needs to deal with. There's not a single one of us amongst us that each day doesn't wake up with something that's plaguing on our minds, or as the day goes on, gets a phone call, an email, a bill in the mail, or here's an update about a kid that just provides an additional stressor. And it triggers, basically, a hormonal response in our body, and then changes the way that we think. And in the animalistic kingdom, right, and we call it fight or flight response, it's where we crank up our cortisol, we're ready to go, we release norepinephrine and adrenaline, and we start going. Unfortunately, we're not in the animal kingdom or being chased by anything that's as specific as a lion, for example, but our bodies are programmed in the same way that when we feel that stress response, that you get a bill and you open it up and it's 5 times larger than you thought it would be, that same response triggers in, and all of a sudden you're doing the same thing to your body, but yet over and over and over again. And in this day and age, with the internet and 24-hour cable news, it's hard to find a break from things. And so rather than bury your head in the sand, the only thing that you can truly do is adapt the way that you respond and to help your body to respond to the challenges it faces. So when it comes to stress, obviously there's things like, hey, you don't have to watch the news all the time. You can turn it off. You can put on some nice music. You can read a book and do other things to start removing your mind from being worried about stress so much. But nutrient-wise, there's also issues that we need to think about in order to offset the stress and the damage that stress does to our bodies. So one of the formulations that's in the Nutrimed line is known as Calm Mind, and right off the bat, the name implies quite a bit. A calm mind, something that many people would say, hey, look, if I could have that, that would probably set my life on the right path. And it's true. It's why I would say it's one of the most important things to lead with. Because a person that can regulate stress, like any interview they do with like a 100-year-old person, you know what they're going to tell you? Besides that, well, some of them, like George Burns, would say, I smoke and I drink every day. That's a weird circumstance. But what did George do all the time? He's a good example in this. He polluted his body with certain chemicals that you go, wow, that should certainly shorten the lifespan. George, on the other hand, his whole career was doing nothing but making people laugh. And that's what he did. He probably offset a lot of that damage by the fact that he lived probably in a stress world, a different level of stress than the rest of us. For the remainder, we look at Calm Mind as a formulation that brings in nutrients that help the neurotransmitters to function properly in our body. And what I mean by that is when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling anxious about something, your neurotransmitters want to deal with that stress imbalance. They want to say, okay, we're dealing with the issue, now we want you to calm back down. But a lot of people get stuck in the speed-forward progression, and so they end up on medications to try to regulate their anxiety all day long. Calm Mind's a formulation that's built around using myo-inositol, which is in the B vitamin family, a little bit of GABA, theanine, taurine, and what's known as magnesium glycinate. This is a powder formula. It can be in a cherry-flavored or it can be in a neutral flavored product. You just mix it into either straight water, or you can put it into juice, or if you like to make a shake like Dr. Bill does in his, Ninja blender, you can drop it right in there as well. But by just doing 1 or 2 scoops, typically people will feel a tremendous difference in the anxiety and stress levels they're feeling in about 20 minutes. But what's unique about it, it also comes into play during different stress times during the day. So if that's for you mid-afternoon, maybe that's a good time for it. But for other people, it's more around sleep issues, relaxing at night. Oftentimes people are doing self-medication. By that, I mean they're usually drinking, wine or beer or something like that to try to take the stress of the day away and then deal with family issues and so forth. By coming home and try drinking a little bit of the Calm Mind first, what you're probably going to notice is your body gets this almost, I want to just say, satiety. It does not feel the need that it's going to have more alcohol or carbohydrates, like in the forms of simple sugars, or things like that, even medications or drugs in some sense for people. All of a sudden, that changes dramatically. What that tells you is, your stresses are real, but your inability to kind of cope with it on a long-term basis may have to do a lot with nutritional deficiencies. So think about Calm Mind in that sense. From kids to adults, it's a tremendously popular formulation. Another one that goes on that same level as nutrient deficiencies is just starting with basics. So Vitamineral Max, almost everybody out there, I'm sure, that listens to this show takes some form of multivitamin mineral. Even though, mainstream healthcare will probably say that's worthless or you're just peeing it down the drain, it's money wasted and so forth, I will agree that in many cases it's money wasted. I wouldn't agree with that in the Vitamineral Max, and there's reasons for that. Delivery system of this formulation is designed so that it's going to be rapidly absorbed. The capsule itself is known as a Generation 2 Veggie Cap. That means in 5 minutes it disintegrates for digestion, so that's a good sign first and foremost, so you don't get what's known as bedpan bullets. A lot of these hard-pressed tablets don't digest very well. And as a person gets older, they produce less stomach acid. They have a harder and harder time breaking down things like these tablets and so forth. So the other side of it is activated formulas, activated versions of the vitamin that are in there. In specific circumstances, we're talking about the B vitamin. So when it comes to B vitamins, they deal with a lot of our stress response, what's going on with thyroid function, energy production. The B vitamins, like in a good example here, we're talking about like vitamin B12. If you look at most of your multivitamins that you probably have on your shelf, it's going to have cyanocobalamin as a form of B12. What you really want is an activated form, which is known as methylcobalamin, because if you take cyanocobalamin, it's got to go through 3 enzymatic conversion steps in your body. And if you don't do those well, you're not going to get the benefit. And so that goes for Vitamineral Max, all these activated forms of the vitamin. And then when it comes to the minerals, they're in this patented form known as albion chelates. And these chelates don't fight with one another, so you don't get a zinc-copper fight going on where you might cause one to be deficient of the other because they're fighting, or they won't bind with fiber and be swept out of the body before you can absorb them, meaning you really would be wasting your money. And they also don't upset your stomach, nor can they be used by pathogenic organisms like E. coli, for example, that want to fuel off free iron. It would be that in this albion chelated form. So they're very safe, easy to digest, and user-friendly. And so those are big advantages that if you're taking a multivitamin mineral, you really got to take a look at what you're using because almost a guarantee it's not very bioavailable. And so when people make that claim, you might be wasting your money. For many of you, that may be very true. And so I would look to this formulation as something that serves as a foundation. I think no matter what protocol Dr. Bill recommends, if you're not on a good multivitamin mineral, it's a big mistake because those are the foundational nutrients that really we need to create the basis for a lot of our cellular function. And serves as a good platform. And from there, I would look at digestion. And in order for us to break down our foods properly, just like we're talking about our nutrients, number one, slow down when you eat. If you like to eat while you're driving or you eat while you're standing up or you don't take time to let your body even know that it's time to eat, you just gobble something down, you're setting yourself up for a big problem. Your body needs to be able to relax because it has to produce a lot of acid. If you ever seen the movie Alien, that thing produces tons of acid to burn through the floor. Your body could do that too, but it needs to focus on producing that acid. If you don't let it, it can't spend the time nor energy and create the acid. That means your food is not going to be digested well. So when we come back, I'll explain more about digestion. And once again, Nutrimedical Report with Dr. Bill Deagle. I'm Ryan. Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is Ryan filling in for Dr. Bill Deagle today on the Nutrimedical Report, discussing the NutriMed lines. This is Dr. Bill's premier line of nutritional products, and we were in the middle of discussing, the benefits of proper digestion. And some simple things besides, saying, hey, I need a different nutrient to utilize, you've got to slow down when you're eating your foods. So we go back to the animal kingdom. Animals that are running around being chased by something and being stressed out are not the ones that are eating anything. And with us, the same thing. Even though we can shove food down our mouths, our bodies are not prepared to digest it. So a couple quick steps. One, stop, sit down, even if you're in your car, and just wait. Wait 1 minute, and just remember you're about to eat some food. You'd like your body to actually consume it, break it down, and use it for fuel, rather than it just being a burden that you have to throw in so you can hurry up to whatever it is, soccer practice or something else for your kids. I know how it is. I've got 2 young ones myself, and it's it's not easy to do. The other thing is be mindful of the food. Know that the things you're eating are meant to be fuel for your body, to build it up. And when you can take a hamburger from a fast food restaurant, literally, for the most part, don't get it with any mayonnaise. You can just put the burger and cheese. But you go to the most popular fast food restaurant in America, you order yourself one of their cheeseburgers with nothing on it. Don't eat it. Actually, order 2. You can eat 1, all right? It'll be probably the last one you eat. Take the other one home, and you and your kids can do an experiment. Put it on the top of a cabinet or, somewhere fun that you can watch it, top of your microwave just sitting there. Just watch it day after day. And, just mark down when you start seeing it growing mold. On the bread or the meat or when it starts really smelling weird, try that out. I know because I've seen somebody put a very popular hamburger out, and it was 7 years old when I saw it, and I thought it was new. I was like, I didn't understand why somebody's lunch was sitting out. They said, no, it's just an experiment. We're just on year 7 with it. And what the point of that is not that you're not going to eat that at some point here and there. The fact is it has nothing inside of it that fuels your body. It's all dead. It's all been stripped down so that it's very stable to mass produce 1 billion times a year so that you'll consume it. Are there calories in it? Yes. Is there anything nutritious about it? No. So your tummy feels full, but your body is starving. And so oftentimes people go, I never feel like I'm really full. And a lot of times it's like, well, you've never really actually eaten any food. You're consuming empty calories. So that's a part of the empty calorie scenario. So let's talk about when there's dysfunction, though. So slow down, enjoy your food, hopefully real food as much as possible, and limit. Do small amounts of the stuff that has no benefit for you, okay? You just do it in small amounts, you're going to be okay. So first things first, if you eat food, though, and you feel like you're just got a brick, in your stomach, you're not breaking your food down properly at the stomach level, most likely you're going to end up with things like gastroesophageal reflux disorder, GERD. You're going to feel like you have too much acid, which is a bit ironic. In a lot of cases, you're not overproducing acid, it's underproducing acid, and you're not breaking down your food properly. So you're not closing, the sphincters around your throat properly, so you're getting a little bit of acid that makes your throat burn and not feel well. The irony to this whole scenario is products like Digestease. So if you're feeling these kind of symptoms within about an hour, hour and a half of eating, what you need to be looking at, like I said, chew your food really well, slow down. But 2, you can add in Digestease, which is 2 forms of hydrochloric acid. That's right, I said acid. Adding acid actually can be a benefit because, remember, most of you are highly stressed. When you're highly stressed, you're not looking at, your body is not producing more acid. It's very rare. You might have a histamine reaction that causes you to produce too much acid, but very rare are you truly just a hyperacidic person. That's not the case. So what you want to do is you add the acid. It also has a little bit of pepsin and gentian root. These 2 things, one helps with protein breakdown, and gentian root is soothing for digestion, but it's also known to help with the proteolytic cells from the stomach to produce acid. But what it's doing is it's adding acid, anywhere from 1 to 6 capsules per meal. Dr. Bill can help you when you do his consultations, decide what's the appropriate dose for you. But by adding the acid, you're going to break down your food properly. And so that way, when it leaves the stomach, it goes to the small intestine, it's in its right form. It needs to be in a very broken down time, they call it. Basically, it's like a soup. It has to be really broken down because there, when you get to the small intestine, that's when enzymes need to gobble it up the rest of the way and then transport it into your system where that fuel is supposed to be used as building blocks, all right? And so Digestease will really help a lot of these people that are stuck with digestive issues that happen the first hour, hour and a half of eating. I do want to note, for those of you that are out there and you're taking products that are supposed to suppress acid, you're like, hey, it gets rid of my symptoms, I feel better, I can eat like a kid again, or whatever ad scheme they have on, lately. Have you ever noticed those ads for people with digestive or reflux disorders? Have you ever noticed where the people are eating? Pizza parlors, the state fair, the giant rack of ribs and stuff like that, right? It's like they got to get like Larry the Cable Guy to show you, like, yeah, see, I'm one of you. It's like, okay, first, if you're eating that kind of food, it's probably making you feel sick because it's not that good for you anyway. So take that as a note. It's probably not the right kind of fuel. It's like putting leaded or diesel fuel in an unleaded tank, right? That your car will not go. And so take that as first and foremost a note. But if you are stuck and you're using these acid suppressive type products, something that you can think about using is GastroHeal. Doesn't mean you have to stop taking whatever the medication is that you're using. If your doctor prescribed it, you should use it. Talk to Dr. Bill and work with your primary care doc. But GastroHeal is a really neat formulation. It's actually a combination of zinc carnosine, been used in Japan for some 20-plus years as a medication there. And it's very soothing. It works on contacts that's chewable. So for erosions, including ulcerations that occur in the stomach and so forth, it's very helpful for the healing process. What's really neat is this whole gastritis where people feel terrible and they're having to use all these acid-suppressing products. This just works like wonderful to get the GI tract back working like it should and repair any damage that's going on. So it can be used, GastroHeal, right on top of using these other types of acid-suppressing products if that's who you are. Otherwise, if you haven't gone down that road and you're looking to kind of get your digestive balance back in store, start at the beginning with Digest Ease and chewing your food properly. And then if symptoms occur a couple hours after eating, and this would be more like gas, bloating, foul-smelling stools, food particles are in your stool, that tells you that there's probably an enzyme difficulty in your body. And so look at something like Gastrozyme, which is a 100% vegetarian enzyme blend, very powerful to break down all different forms of our foods to make sure that it's properly broken down. And so Gastrozyme is very easy. It's just a capsule. You can take it basically at the start or the middle of the meal and help to break that food all the way down so that it gets into these small tripeptide forms. That means the intestinal tract can take it across, use it, build muscle, make your brain work, make you feel good, and do all the right things. So those are really nice, easy ones to work with. Living Probiotic Ultra, though, is a probiotic formulation that day in and day out, we're always losing good beneficial bacteria in our gut, and we usually eat and drink things that benefit the bad guys in our stomach and our intestinal tract. So use Living Probiotic as an alternative to make sure you're getting good population of bacteria flourishing in your GI tract for long-term good health. We'll be right back. We'll be talking about some new topics. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Nutrimedical Report. Dr. Bill Deagle. Welcome back, everyone. Nutrimedical Report, Dr. Bill Deagle. I'm Ryan Frace, filling in for Dr. Bill today. Dr. Bill's getting some good vacation time here, and I just left you off with, we were just going to move into the topic of joint health and finishing on that last part about digestion and making sure that your gut is working properly. I want to mention a couple things. Living Probiotic was that daily probiotic, 5 billion organisms per single capsule. Great thing to use. You can open up the capsule and put it into juice or into some food very easily, because a lot of the food products, when it comes to probiotics, they're dramatically lacking active amounts of cultures. So when you take in a yogurt, for example, oftentimes you're vastly overwhelmed by the amount of sugar that's in them. I mean, I don't know if people are reading these labels or not, but most of these yogurts carry anywhere from 10 to 18 grams of sugar. And they're tiny amounts of yogurt, so I mean, literally they're more potent in sugar than a Coke. And so you got to watch out for what you're putting in there. Try to get a sugar-free source, and you're looking for fermentation. You're looking for good bacterial counts. So one of the things you can do is fortify your food. So take Living Probiotic, make it really easy, open it up, sprinkle it in cereal that your kids eat, so forth. Help them. Be more creative with what you're delivering to yourself and your family. It's not that difficult to do to help fortify your food and your drinks. the Living Probiotic Ultra, I wasn't able to mention this, but this is when the gut is really having dysfunction and you're saying, hey, look, we're being overrun, with bad guys here. You all remember many years back, some of you, think it was a great idea. Others wasn't sure, but it was called the surge, right? It was when the government decided that we're going to put a whole lot of troops into an area that really needed to get rid of bad guys. What happened? Overwhelmed the bad guys, right? Drove them out, right? And then I think you know how the story, is kind of finishing off. Apparently we've decided whatever that area was is not worth defending. So imagine your own gut. You're like, well, it's really not worth defending, so I'm not going to keep soldiers in there. That's what a lot of us do to our own intestinal tract. So think of it like a war zone, because it is. There are trillions of bacteria in our intestinal tract. If they took it out and weighed them, even though they're invisible to us, if they were to weigh them, they would weigh over 3 pounds. And so all these little bacteria are living in there, and there's a precarious balance that must be met, just like anywhere. Any culture we live in, right? It's the same story. There must be a proper balance going on, and generally we like to think you got to have a lot more good guys than bad, and that keeps things a lot more civil, right? So you take Living Probiotic Ultra. Why? It's 100 billion organisms per single caps. Very easy, again, to open up and use with from kids on up to the elderly, so it's no problem at all. So keep that one in mind. That's when you really need to, create the surge in your own gut to flush out and deal with the pathogenic organisms that can overwhelm you and get that dysbiosis going on. The other one that's in there is GastroCleanse. GastroCleanse, I like to think about as sort of a bouncer. He is a very specific, big, powerful probiotic. He actually is Saccharomyces boulardii. And Saccharomyces boulardii was actually discovered in the lychee nut many, many years ago by a man named Henry Boulardii. And they found out that when the locals, this was in Vietnam, had intestinal problems like diarrhea, they would eat the lychee fruit. And inside the lychee fruit, when they analyzed it, they realized that, hey, this bacterium is very powerful at seemingly stopping, a problem. And so what's called GastroCleanse in the Nutrimedical line is actually Saccharomyces boulardii. And in just 2 caps, they're tiny little capsules. Again, you can open them up if you need to. But in 2 tiny little capsules, you'll get over 10 billion of these organisms, which would be a therapeutic dose. And what's neat about Saccharomyces is it's literally been studied in infants as young as 2 months of age in hospital settings with diarrhea on up into the elderly. And it is actually something that in many healthcare facilities for aging populations to inhibit C. difficile type of problems, that they'll want to use probiotics like Saccharomyces boulardii. So whether you're traveling into odd areas, you got to get dental work, you'll be visiting the hospital, rest homes, retirement centers, C. difficile is something that's quite rampant, and it's easy for us to defeat it, really, in our own bodies. Maybe we can't get it off all the countertops and every surface. But again, remember, as I started this out at the top of the hours, it's about our body's adaptation to our environment. Okay? You can be victim all you want. You can say, hey, we're just overwhelmed with bad things, bad guys. It's a tough break, so I'm just going to be sick. You don't have to be that way. That's what Dr. Bill's trying to inspire, I think, day in and day out, is to say, hey, look, you can up your defenses. You can change the way that you react to your environment. And we all know we can do it. You just got to have the tools. And so hopefully the Nutrimedical report is helping each of you to find that place for yourself and your family. So let me move over to joint issues, because there's nothing worse than losing your mobility. It really becomes a life-threatening issue. Not at the early age, but if you lose your mobility as you get older, you start sitting around a lot or you're bedridden, it's not good news. Your body will literally fall apart fast. And doctors used to tell you, when you hurt yourself, remember these days, you'd hurt yourself and they'd be like, hey, just, lay in bed, elevate your leg, or we'll put it in a cast and you just sit there. I guarantee anybody that's listening right now that's had a problem, doctors aren't telling you that anymore. They're like, as soon as you can, I need you up and moving and walking and going. Even if you've got to drag that cast with you, I don't care. Move. Because your body literally breaks down. If you want to stimulate osteoporosis, they're like, oh, no, I don't want osteoporosis. Lay in your bed for 7 days. It literally jumpstarts osteoporosis. That's why astronauts, when they go to outer space, there's such an issue with them and bone loss, is because if we don't have that gravitational banging on our bodies all the time, It's bad for us. Isn't that funny? We actually need to pound on our bodies. They need to be stressed. The good Lord designed us this way. He wants us to be pushed. When we stress our systems, it causes growth. It causes us to re-nourish our bodies. And when it comes to joints, I'll bet a lot of you don't know this, most of your joint tissue, there's no circulation to the joint. Did you know that the only way that you can cause circulation to the joint is mobility? You have to move it. And if you don't move it, there's nothing it can do. So when you go, oh, you know, this area of the body's hurting me, this area is the body, it doesn't mean you have to go run, but you need to stretch. You need to move it all the time. It needs to constantly get movement. Otherwise, it can't flush out waste products and absorb nutrients. So let me give you some specific nutrients that have been very helpful that are newer formulations in the line. Joint performance. So if you're a person out there that's starting to notice that, you know, the aching joints, you're not going to be categorized as, say, osteoarthritis. It's the early stages of what's going on. Maybe you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and you're like, you know, I used to do pretty darn well going out there on the weekends and playing soccer or football or whatever it is. Now, what is going on? I'm like breaking down. It's true, you're breaking down. You don't have to. So joint performance is a formulation that carries what's known as xanthohumol, an herb, out of hops, hesperidin, another herb. Both of those are really nice at bringing down causes of inflammation. And then it also has what's known as halojoint, which is a material that's been shown in clinical studies to stimulate hyaluronic acid. What that means is it allows the joints to basically have a lot of fluid and to be frictionless. So we need that frictionless aspect going on between our cartilage and our bones. It has to be like ice on ice. If it's not like ice on ice, if even there's one tiny bit of grain of sand, if you will, in there, it's going to cause inflammation, irritation, and eventual breakdown. So what we have with joint performance is it can basically restore the function of the joint, bring down what's called the effusion or swelling, and get you back on track very fast. And for those of you that keep popping NSAIDs day in and day out, got to be very careful because NSAIDs used in long term are dangerous, and they oftentimes end up stimulating your joints to deteriorate. I'll come back to joints because this is very important when we return after these messages. Back with the Nutrimedical. Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report with Dr. Bill Deagle. I'm Ryan, and I'm filling in for Dr. Bill. And we were just having a discussion about joint support, and for those weekend warriors and people that are starting to notice a little slowdown in the way their joints are functioning and then recovering, and they end up popping lots of anti-inflammatories and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they're called. Oftentimes those seem pretty benign, you know. It seems like on commercials there's literally a contest for who can take the least amount of pills that last the longest kind of a thing. And that's all well and good, but the question is, what is going wrong with the joints? I mean, don't you wonder that when you're like looking at these people, you're like, yeah, I guess that's good, but is that really solving their problem? I mean, are you really going to be able to go out and do, you know, dancing, you know, every night, or is that's it? You just take the NSAIDs forever. It's like that. It's not going to solve the problem. The joints are on a collision course. Basically, you've initiated a breakdown process. Inflammation is starting to increase, which triggers a lot of what's known as cytokines. These are little inflammatory messengers, and they're not going to stop unless you can resolve what's going on there. And so rather than just trying to put the halt on these messages so they don't cause pain, that's a lot like saying you're driving down the road. You look at your dashboard, and there's a warning light that says oil change comes on. And so I guess the question would be, you know, you could take something that just covers it up. So you could take some black tape, stick it over that, and you would say, I don't see any warning light. Seems fine to me. I don't notice anything. But what's the real question there? What's going on? Don't you want to go to the mechanic, kind of figure that out? That's Dr. Bill, of course, or your doctor that you go to locally, wherever that may be. And, you know, you got to pop the hood and look at it and go, hey, this really does need oil. Well, when it comes to your joints, they do need like oil. They need synovial fluid. And that is what joint performance, this formula, is like. It's like an oil change for your joints, and it basically allows them to be smooth and slippery and bring down that inflammation and start to recover and change the trajectory of joint deterioration, because the way that our joints break down, you can't just think about it as, you know, I used to play football, that one injury, and that's the end of it. You know, that's just, I'm destined to have bad knees, you know, from one event. The fact is, most people didn't get that one injury. They didn't have that terrible, you know, knee injury from football. they just noticed that things aren't working as well anymore. Joint performance is the formulation they need to start looking at. Different than just taking, say, glucosamine and chondroitin. It's the earlier stages that allow you to rebuild this hyaluronic acid, which becomes the backbone that allows glucosamine and chondroitin to even reside in the joint tissue. So think about joint performance, very cool formula. The other one is tendon mender. This has been just phenomenal. The feedback is really wild about what this has been able to do for people. Tendon mender is a very unique molecule that comes from the comb of roosters. It's a little red part that is on their tops of their heads. And the fact is this material has a unique message when we consume it. So you take a pill, it's usually 2 a day, and it gives a message to the tenocytes, the cells that make up all our tendons and ligaments, and it basically tells them to calm down and relax and realign themselves like they should. Many people out there have had rotator cuff problems, elbow, they'll call it tennis elbow type issues, knee, plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendinopathies, and even carpal tunnel. Well, these are the kind of areas where it's very tough to get to, as I mentioned before. Very little circulation of these areas. And once it's been sort of inflamed or these cells start being what they say is thickening, they start becoming thick, almost like they're scar tissuing. And they don't work as well, and they cause you to feel uncomfortable and pain, and you don't want to use your arm or your knee or your feet like you used to. And so if anybody's had any of these issues, you know, you're putting like the bands on them, you're wearing special supports in your shoes, and you're doing all these things, but no resolution. And in some cases, this may be months. Some cases, it may be a year or longer, where it's like literally nothing you do seems to help. And it's because you can't penetrate inside where you need to, these tenocytes. So sometimes you end up getting injections, you know, like cortisone and things like that, which are, you know, that's no fun. It's one, no fun to get them. And two, it's no fun for what they really do. They may shut down inflammation, but in a lot of cases, it's not really beneficial for long-term health. They really may lead to some other problems. And so tendon mender, it's very interesting. In a matter of days and weeks, people taking it start noticing these shifts going on. They're like, wait a minute, I'm starting to get out of bed. And you know who you are out there. You get out of bed, and it's seriously like this whole limbering exercise. You got to basically have a yoga class before you can kind of go anywhere in your house. You're like, you know, God forbid you have to go down the stairs immediately, right? Because you need to stretch out first before your Achilles pops or something like that. You know who I'm talking about. Tendon mender is a phenomenal formulation that gives messages to these tenocytes, causes them to relax, thins them out. They've done clinical trials with this where people that do, they have these same problems you may be suffering from, and the tenocytes start thinning out, so they're not so swollen and basically like scar tissue, and they start functioning like they should. This is a life changer because there's too many people that have these quote-unquote repetitive motion injuries that are just stuck and not happy. I don't blame you for being grumpy because I've had something like this, and I used tendon mender for an Achilles tendinopathy, and I'll tell you, it was a very tough time for me personally to try to even go downstairs until I was able to really get loosened up, and in a matter of a week, for me personally, I had some really very interesting results. So tendon mender for the repetitive motion issues. The other thing that we need to look at is something like leptin metabolic. Now, leptin metabolic is interesting because we're looking at twofold issues here. One, when it comes to joint issues, I want to bring this formulation up because it's actually been studied with patients that had osteoarthritis. But they're patients that were overweight. They had a body mass index, or BMI, greater than 30. So if you don't know what your BMI is, go to the Internet, type BMI index, right? You go down to your height, and then you scroll over to your weight, and right there it gives you a number. You're somewhere between 22 up to, I don't even know, 40-something. But you'll find your number. Well, if you're over 30, you would basically be considered, you know, you're moving into a pretty tough area. They would actually categorize that as generally obese. And so they took these people that were overweight. They had them not do any dietary changes or no exercise changes, but they were already categorized with osteoarthritis. So they would take one of the material that's in leptin metabolic per day, and in 12 weeks they were going to see, you know, what changed. And the researchers knew to do this because when they were in vitro, that means studying the material in a petri dish, okay? They were looking for unique benefits of this material. They noticed that it stopped adipocytes from becoming fat cells. It changed the way they wanted to differentiate. They didn't want to make more fat cells. So when you put on like about, I think it's 1.6 kilograms, you're actually putting on billions of fat cells. So you'd really like that not to happen if possible, because fat cells, although you may just picture it as storage of calories, fat cells secrete hormones, lots of them. And in some cases, they're secreting a lot of inflammatory hormones that you don't really want, and that's not helpful for your body. So leptin metabolic, what it turned out to do for these people in 12 weeks was they had significantly lower pain levels, judged by what's known as VAS, or Visual Analog Scale. And then they also had a significant improvement in their joint function, which was done by Womack scale. And so those are great signs for people that are not changing their diet, not exercising. They're getting this benefit. But what was interesting in the blood work was the inflammation, both in their serum, so in the blood, and in the synovium, which is drawing the fluid out of the joint specifically. All these different inflammatory cytokine markers all significantly dropped. What does that mean? It means they're having this major change in the way the joints and the body is feeling, right? These people did lose weight. It was about a 1.2-pound weight loss, and then the people that were on placebo gained about 1.6 pounds. But I wouldn't categorize this necessarily as a weight loss product. It's really weight becomes a byproduct of how your body is doing. If your body has less inflammation and less challenges, it's going to want to basically not hold on to more weight. The other side of it is it needs to sensitize to leptin. Leptin comes from fat cells. It's a signaling hormone, as well as known as a cytokine, that goes to your brain that says, hey, we have a lot of stored up calories in our body. So please, you don't have to overeat. We do not need to keep going back to the all-you-can-eat buffet. You just don't need the food. You don't need the calories. We're good. I know most of you out there would like to say, hey, yeah, it would be fun if my body would finally go, stop eating so much. You don't even need it. We don't need it. We're stored up. The leptin metabolic opens up this new door to be leptin sensitized so that your body can appetite regulate properly, but at the same time have these beneficial effects we were just describing for these OA patients. Less inflammation, better health benefits. So thanks for joining us this hour on the Nutrimedical Report, and we'll be back next week with Dr. Bill Deagle. Thanks.